Welcome to this week's edition of Colleen's Community Connections, Earth Friendly April. We're here with Toni Farmer of Toni Farmer's Garden. I still have a really hard time calling you Toni Farmer. I have been babysitting for her 4 children since they were
a long
time. So.
And she was raised right, so she calls me Mrs. Farmer.
I'm
trying to convince her now, it's Toni.
I know. You'll always be Mrs. Farmer to me. So we are here. You would not think that we were on Main Street in Moorestown, New Jersey, because we are honestly back in this amazing garden oasis that you've created back here. Do you want to give us a little bit of a tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've lived here for a really long time and I've gardened in different places back here for years, but I drew this design on paper 25 years ago and just could never make it happen until COVID. And we were all stuck at home.
It's true.
And there's some good things that came out of COVID, and I was able to I did all this myself.
Wow.
With the exception of lifting some of the heavy rocks. And the reason I did it myself was I wanted to prove to women that we can do this by ourselves. You can learn to operate the tools, you can figure it out, you can shovel the dirt and the rock. And so you don't have to do it yourself, but you can if you want to.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You're amazing. You run Toni Farmer's Garden online, which, can you tell us a little bit about that and what you kind of offer there? It's one of my favorite sites.
Yeah, so even though I've been involved in gardening for a long time, over the last 5 years I've become deeply passionate about environmental issues and about a global sustainable food system. And there are so many people that still don't have food. And back during World War II, Americans grew about 40% of their food in their backyard. It's a lot of food. And now we're starting
40%.
we're starting to see some issues with our global supply chain again. So know that most people don't know how to garden any longer. It's a lost skill. And I believe everyone should know, because if you want to grow your own food, you're missing all those skills. So I operate a website and a Facebook group and also an Instagram handle. Every day I post tips about this is how you grow this, what you should be doing now in March, how to decide what you're going to grow, what your soil should be like. You can ask me anything in those spaces, and my goal is to help you. And so I do get paid for consultations and speaking engagements, and I sell a beautiful garden planner and some other things like that, but primarily my goal is to teach everyone how to grow food.
I was going to say, I always see people pop up with different questions, and I'm like, it's interesting to see people will comment like, oh, I have that same question too. So, but your video tutorials are amazing and very helpful.
Thank you.
The one I always have in mind is the last year when you did when you were growing the beans up those, they almost look like a teepee that you got those from the forest, right? Where did you
go? Bamboo?
The bamboo, yes.
So bamboo is an invasive species to South Jersey, to the United States, and it grows out of control. So most places that are growing it, they want to get rid of it. So while I never tell anyone that you should trespass on someone else's property and cut it down, generally speaking, if you knock on the door and say, can I have some of that? They're like, yes. Take it.
How much do you want?
And it's a fantastic renewable resource, and it makes really good posts for beautiful trellises of all different sizes and shapes.
That's great. Okay, so what is the rhyme or reason? This is obviously your master plan here. So you want to walk us through and how you organize this?
Sure. So most people divide gardening into 2 sections. There are people who like beautiful ornamental, think longwood gardens. Everything looks stunning and perfect. And there's vegetable gardens who are just a hot mess. And there's pie pans and string and everything's a mess. And people are like, I'm not sure I want that in my yard. And I said, why can't we have both? So I constructed a formal garden based on dozens and dozens of pictures I looked at, but everything I grow here virtually is edible food. And I grow pounds and pounds and pounds, so much that I vastly exceed what my family could ever eat, and I end up giving away or selling all of the rest of it at the end of the year. So this is a good example. I built these. You would ordinarily make these entirely ornamental, and you can, these boxes.
Okay.
But these are peas growing in here, and you can see they're already shooting up.
Oh, look at
all of these, and they will have this natural trellis to grow on. This particular variety has bright purple flowers on it, so this will be beautiful. And no one will even know that it's edible until they get really close and I yank one up and say, would you like a snack?
Wow. Very cool. So it's also beautiful as well.
And we'll plant other things in here as the season goes by. And then in here I normally have, you're looking at my garden at the worst moment of the year.
That's okay, yes.
It's about to like burst forth and be beautiful. Normally these are entirely full and spilling over with tomatoes. There's a lot of herbs in here now. This is rosemary that's coming back right now. The little boxwoods just to kind of curate the corner here. This is some kale that wintered over.
Now what does that mean, wintered over?
So we have a lot of crops that survive our particular climate year round. Most people don't know that. You can garden 10 months out of the year here.
Interesting.
Sorry, my dog wants to weigh in. And so we will, there are some things that you can plant outdoors, and as long as it doesn't get below 32 degrees for months, it will survive. So kale, spinach, cilantro, which we think of a warm weather crop because of Mexican food,
right,
is perfectly happy growing over there in my garden. Garlic winters over, most of the herbs. So some of that's starting to spring back. And then this is the leftovers of lemongrass over here, if you like Thai food.
Yum.
And so I'm gonna have to dig that up and replant that because he's probably a goner after living through the winter. But this will be filled with eggplant and peppers and lettuce and everything else you can imagine. I normally have a few watermelons in here. They spill over and they create the watermelon on the ground instead of, which is great because watermelons will rot sometimes if they're come in contact with the soil. So we'll sit happily on the warm gravel and grow, and more herbs, and then I will continue to replace the things that expire. Like once I've grown all my lettuce and we've eaten it all, I'll just plant another crop of lettuce.
Okay.
Unlike tomatoes where you plant them once in the spring and you're harvesting, they stay there and you're harvesting all the way through.
Right. And is there any, like, do you need to change where you put things and let, the layout of everything, or no? Like, is it for the soil and like overturning the soil?
Yeah, there's a general rule of thumb about how you rotate crops,
okay,
which is pretty involved for each crop. So you can go on Toni Farmer's Garden and ask all those questions, but every plant takes certain nutrients out of the soil and some plants replace them. So by rotating them, you make sure you're not depleting that same piece of soil year after year.
Over and over again. And then there's even those rules of 3, right? That is like 3, you can plant 3 things together and they help each other?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I have found over the years of actually doing a lot of research, most of the wives' tales turn out to be just that.
Okay.
We try them, they don't tend to do any harm, but they're not really doing the thing that everyone claims they can do.
Exactly.
So you still try them. And then I added a water feature because it's beautiful, but this is highly, highly functional. So in order to have a really healthy ecosystem in your backyard, you need to have birds as part of that. They're really important eco indicators.
Oh, wow.
They keep your insect pressure under control, and they add other valuable things to the garden, and they need a water source, especially when it's hot. And honeybees also need a water source. So if you come here in the summer when it's hot, the birds will start the day having a bath in the morning. This will be covered in honeybees as they come to have a drink because it's hard for them to find water. And then they will help control all the pests in my garden. So I don't have to use a lot of, I would not use a lot of pesticides, but I don't even feel forced down that path very often. And we've destroyed our ecosystems for what sounds like a good cause. When a builder comes in and buys property, they strip it in order to build homes for new families. And I want those new families to come to town, right? We want them here. But we have to go back to rebuild our ecosystem of all the bugs, little animals, insects, and biodiversity that we stripped when the building happened.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it sure
Now,
does.
this is phenomenal. As someone who is not, so my mother-in-law is also a master gardener. I think you're getting your certification for master gardener. It overwhelms me and as the average person. So what advice would you give someone like me that would love to have this in my yard, but I don't even know where to begin?
Sure. So I would say 3 things. One is start small.
Okay.
Just do a couple of raised beds. Don't go crazy the first year because you're going to have a lot of failure your first year. That's okay. It's normal. You will get better by leaps and bounds. But a lot of people, when they build a big garden first and then they have that first year of failure, like, I never should have done any of this. If you start small, it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
And then you'll try again.
Number 2 is plant what you eat. That sounds like obvious advice.
No, but that's
You'd be shocked how many people end up going to Lowe's or Home Depot and there's eggplant and they buy the eggplant plant and they plant it and then it produces eggplant and they go, no one in our house eats eggplant.
Right.
So I say, what is it you're putting in your grocery basket the most often? That's what you should try and plant. And if you can buy the seedlings the first year, do that.
Okay.
And because all the garden centers will carry them. And then if there's something else you want to grow that's not there and you want to grow that from seed, I can walk anyone through that.
it.
And the last thing is, I do recommend raised beds. You don't need them. You can plant anywhere in the dirt that you want to, but there's something about creating a structure that everyone knows this is where we're planting our vegetables.
Right.
Many people in South Jersey have a landscaper, and landscapers are generally not great at knowing what is edible and what's not.
Paying attention to what's growing.
They will rip out or weed whack things that are just planted in your landscaping. But if you have a raised bed, everyone knows vegetables are growing here.
Right.
It also gives you a chance to control the soil. I don't know what is in your soil, and if you've been applying fertilizer for years to get a good lawn, that may work against you. And so this gives me a chance to amend and control my soil, and also keep it in one place, keep it from eroding. And a couple other fun things it does too is you can bury a soaker hose in here and hook it up to a timer, and it will water itself and you don't need to think about it.
Now that's something I didn't even think about, because that's always when we lived in North Carolina, that was the boys would have to take turns going out there and watering, and it was always the chore that.
Well, I don't want to get your boys out of chores. So
that's true. Let's not go crazy. So you constructed these.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone in the area that may also help with that?
Well, so I have plenty of videos online if you want to do it yourself.
Okay.
But a lot of people don't want to do it themselves. They are either they have a health issue that they can't do it, they don't have the time, or they really just feel overwhelmed and they want to get started. There's a company in South Jersey called Backyard Gardens. These guys are awesome. They will come to your house and they will build whatever you want. You've got deer, they'll throw a fence in. You need a trellis, they've got you. So I highly recommend them.
And we will be highlighting them next week. So it segues perfectly into that.
Awesome.
So where can people find you if they want to start and they have questions to ask you? How do they find you online and how do they begin?
Sure. So on Instagram, I'm Toni Farmer's Garden.
Okay.
On Facebook, it's Toni Farmer's Garden Club. It's about 1,500 of the nicest people you have ever met, and there's no drama. We are just talking about gardening.
Just trying to help each other out with gardening.
That's right. Very generous community as well. And then I have a website called ToniFarmersGarden.com. And I also do events at my home. So I'll do a garden festival here, and I occasionally do a pop-up shop where I sell garden equipment. And then in the middle of the summer, if you want a curated gourmet veggie box, I do those as the produce comes in. So I only make them available when I have an abundance of fresh produce.
Okay.
And it comes with all kinds of fun extras. They make great housewarming gifts. Or
that's great. That's a really good
Instead
idea.
of sending flowers one time, just
why not?
send a beautiful box of veggies.
And yes. And usually you do in Moorestown where the people line up and they get their seeds, right? Are you doing that again this year?
I will, but it's interesting. So many people have started gardening, and then I taught them all how to grow seeds.
So now they're like,
they've got their own seedlings
we know how to
give
do
away.
it. Yep.
So I will do it, but
Okay.
it probably will not be the giant crowd that normally comes for that. And that's a good thing. People are learning.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for inviting us into your garden,
Of
and
course.
I cannot wait. We'll have to come back and maybe do some footage when it's all
When
blooming.
it looks pretty.
And yes.
Please.
But check her out online if you have any questions. I mean, I'm constantly like, what's wrong? What pesticides should I use? What's wrong with my plant?
Yeah.
So she'll answer all those questions for you. And also, if you want her to come over and just give you a consultation, she can do that too. That's a service that you provide, right?
Yep. I don't do a lot of that, but I do have some dates coming up where I'll be doing those all day on Saturdays for folks who want to get started.
All right, save me a spot.
All right.
Thank you again. Yeah, I
Sure.
really appreciate it. And thanks for following along this week. If you want to get started with your own garden in your own backyard, Toni Farmer's your girl.